Hey everyone, Whip here and welcome on back to Minecraft. Today we are taking a look at this here city design that we came up with many months ago, and we're going to be talking about how to turn it in from this blueprint right here into something a little bit more like this big old guy right here behind me. If y'all are excited for this episode, please be sure to hit that like button down below, and without any further ado, let's get into this one. First and foremost, coming back over here into the city that we planned out a very long time ago, we used a lot of different colors to explain what each of these different areas are. I believe this is more like an old town being the orange, that was more industrial, so we'd have a lot of the functional things, the blacksmiths, those types of stuff, wagons over there. This was kind of like a merchant district, a lot of just housing. And then the blue was supposed to be more of like a royal district, the more wealthy area of it. But the big important thing that really sells this area apart is what we're actually using the green for right here. The green is meant to symbolize a road or an open area here in the center, and then the lime green concrete powder that we have is symbolizing the little neighborhood roads, the side streets that would be much smaller. Now, those road designs are very important inside of your Minecraft build that you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to do, but they only really work when the houses come alongside them and work with them. They have to work here together because we have the road kind of going this way and curving around that way and then slightly curving back over to here to spit out into what might be a port area. But if we just made all of the houses like coming through here and we just kind of turned this into like a boxy shape right there, and just did one of those traditional L-shaped buildings that you typically see in Minecraft, we would open it up right like this, and you'd have this weird open spot right there. And then maybe this one we bring over to this side, and it's just another one of those L's, something like this, and you're kind of getting that shape of the road that we're talking about right there, but it becomes a lot more rigid and very boxy. Whereas instead, back over here in my survival world, if you use the strength of diagonal structures or structures that just aren't your traditional straight lines in Minecraft, you can create a lot of interest inside of the builds that you're doing and inside of the roadways that just makes your city a lot more interesting. Taking this street as an example right here, this is kind of the main street, and we're using that same curving idea with the street itself, but you can see the buildings are helping to mimic that completely. Like this right here, this isn't a traditional, like a full diagonal build. It's just 3, push it back a little bit for 3 more, then push it back a little bit for another 3 blocks right there. And that helps it just strengthen the line of the roadway itself, which creates these natural curves. If everything you're working on inside of your Minecraft world don't have blocks here, but if it's just a straight line like that and a straight line going across like that, it's going to feel very rigid and not very natural. Now that our roadways look super sweet and they're bordered by all these amazing looking buildings that totally work and flow with the road, what are we going to do to get people to actually walk down said road? Well, in my opinion, it's about creating a point of interest that they want to explore to. In this case, we just walked right in through our front gate. As amazing as things look in shaders here, it's even more important that we have this structure right here. This little fountain is a splash of color, something different, something that draws the eye, and it's also a big open area. You're walking through a more narrow street. This is still a pretty wide street, but it's surrounded by buildings that are also overhanging over the street, and you come through here and it looks like open, big blue skies, maybe some clouds, and we've got this big fountain area here. That's very important. Creating a point of interest that's going to cause people to want to explore down your city. Like here you can see it's a little bit darker, so that's still interesting and different than what's in here. Whereas over this way, you can see that big castle looming over the tops of the buildings and another tower right here. So obviously you're going to want to explore down this road to go see what the castle is. And then as you kind of round this corner, it disappears for a second. So you're like, ooh, wait, I got to keep moving forward. I got to keep moving forward. You see a little bit of it right here. And just using the shapes of the buildings, you can hide the sight lines. You can create way more interesting ways for things to go. Sorry for the flashing banners. Optifine pre-releases, folks. And you come over here on top of this bridge, you get the full view of it, and you can see the final part of the pathway that in here has actually changed from being that gray into our red bricks over here, which again is something different, causing you want to keep exploring all the way into the rest of the castle. Back over here at the fountain in regular old Minecraft, castle still looking pretty good up there. We got our cloud horse in the sky. And one other thing I want to mention is using variety in your pathways to direct people around. For example, in my main street that I have here, you can see the smooth stone kind of lining it and pushing people down to venture down this street right here, because it kind of funnels you in like that. It's very, very slight, no signs or anything, but something that kind of pushes people forward. Also, over onto the sides, you'll see a lot of areas where I have kind of side little back alleyways to maybe this blacksmith. There's some dirt that starts popping up in these areas. Something that is very, very simple, but even a slight transition in the ground is going to cause somebody to want to explore a little bit more. And another great tool to cause people to want to explore around your amazing city that you're working on building, beyond just making your pathways, adding things in the distance people might want to go explore, pops of color, whatever it might be, big old custom trees hiding the big tower back there, is using density. This main street right here, because it's something that I want to be flashy and people see all these big lovely things to go and exploring, I didn't want to include many of these guys. The wagons, the carts, the cars, the whatever they might be. I didn't want to include many of them on here because I want to be something easy for the player to travel upon. But using density, you can also force the player to come over and explore different areas, like a side street with a market that is all again transitioned to being a dirt floor down here, and a bunch of market stalls in the area where it feels very, very full. You can barely get into the buildings around the corners, and it causes people to really want to move around and just kind of go explore the little nooks and crannies. And for example here, if you do that, you can come all the way back here and find a lovely little park to hang out in that again is bringing in that grass and bringing that transition point of having more greenery and life in here and just different colors. We're kind of through this alleyway, feels very gray and stony. You can see a little bit of dirt disappearing, and then you come back here and it's just big and it very, very cool looking and just something worth exploring. You pop around the corner, you keep following the dirt pathway, and you got a way down into the sewers, which is where my storage system is. One thing I can't stress enough, as we kind of use this example here of changing the lines in those structures, it became much, much more rigid. Using the strength of building a diagonal structure to help your road feel much more like a natural curve, something that would more exist in the real world. We don't want to fully just mimic the real world, but we want to take an inspiration from it for what you're creating inside of Minecraft if you're trying to create a city, because obviously things are kind of working out pretty well as far as design goes in the real world here. Thankfully, we don't live in a giant blocky world, as much fun as it might be to live inside of Minecraft, but it can be something that's really going to help you out. Maybe this area right here, you can straighten that one out if you really needed to, but let's talk about a few things that if you're not totally comfortable with diagonal buildings yet, that you can use to still get that same effect. Some build styles that we use inside of Minecraft don't cater very well to using diagonal structures, like this Nordic village here as I'm staring at a diagonal building. But a lot of these ones don't really work too well with being on an angle because it's such a rigid shape. This is very traditional shape to a lot of these things inside of the game, and it sometimes doesn't work out too well. So if we want to still stick with these more rigid shapes for the buildings themselves, there's a few things that we can do, like adding in a small garden, like using this little garden that would bump it forward a block, just simply a block right there, and then you just kind of curve, do a more of a rounded garden to fill that point there. And then also using things like custom trees or just greenery or foliage or small retaining walls, or maybe even the wagons and carts and everything that you're using inside of the rest of your build. That can be a very, very easy way to force that diagonal curve that we might have been looking for. Simple things such as an oak log with 2 campfires on it that you extinguish so it looks like some firewood lying around. That can be a great way that we can add in that little bit of like almost like a fake diagonal building to help the flow of our roadway. In this case, we are up here in a snowy winter wonderland, being the mountains, and we have a bunch of snow layers around that are also kind of forcing where the pathway goes around the build. But like this major one right over here, you can see that we're forcing people to want to come up the pathway this way. It's not a straight line or anything, and it doesn't really feel like this area is just open here. Like this snowbank to me doesn't feel like something I want to be walking on because it's so weird. It's so like bulky. It's just kind of flowing all over. It feels like a lot of snow that wouldn't really be something to walk through. So in this case, literally just dividing it up by adding in that difference to the terrain. If this wasn't a snowy environment, you could just put a bunch of flowers right here, similarly to how we did it over on this side, and using the different ways to the road to kind of go through here, using the terrain to your favor. You can create a lot of interest if you're not super comfortable, again, with those weird diagonal structures that you're seeing a lot of people nowadays start to build. They're a little interesting to get used to, and sometimes I know they look a bit off, but that shape can help the entire build that you're working on appear so much better off, as I'm just stumbling over all my words. In this video, I want to give you as many examples and tools as I can to help you grow as a builder and come up with something much better. In another build that I've done inside my survival world, being this giant desert city, it's almost like a Nile River inspired atmosphere, but not quite. It's more like Middle Eastern, Nile River, Egyptian inspired, everything over there mashed together into my own weird style that I've come up with. But this one, very much all of the structures in here work on straight lines. Maybe this is probably about as extreme of an angle as I'm going to be using through here, but it still doesn't feel like a grid-like area because we're using a lot of natural bits like this sugarcane and all of these leaves around here, some flowers, and just using the coarse dirt and granite and oak and things like that to create our pathways throughout here, and then making the side streets look very busy and lush and just kind of taking over part of our main pathway. That's a great way, again, where you can create that illusion that all your buildings aren't just these straight lines and boxy shapes. You can still get away with that and help create those nice little curves for the roads that you have, and create small points of interest like this little well right here. That would be something that I would be, if I'm personally looking down this street, if I'm not already totally blown away by wanting to be like, ooh, I gotta go see what that thing is. And then you walk down here a little bit and you're just like, okay, this is cool. And then you're just like, whoa, there's a big old palace over there to explore. If for some reason you're back here and you're like me, I like to look down the side streets. I don't always explore them, but when I'm walking by, I'm like, oh, look at that. And you see a little well up there, and this slight change in the terrain right here, where it just steps up 2 blocks simply like that, it brings you a totally different viewpoint, and you just feel like you're in a different part of the city and wanting to explore more. Using the terrain to your favor here as well, where it goes up and down and all which ways and around corners, just the more variety that you can build into these places, the better off you're gonna be. That's, for me, like, that's a big reason why, for myself, a lot of the terraforming and things I do is to add variety into the city so that we can have staircases like these where you can go up and just kind of move in all these different directions. It's very important to me, at least, to have variation inside of the builds that I'm doing. Otherwise, like, I know a lot of people like to do like the super flat builds and everything like that, where everything's down on one layer. And for me, that just feels boring. You're forcing yourself to make these giant structures. Instead, utilize what Minecraft has already given you and utilize the terrain that it's created for you, and have your houses on different layers, and it can just force you to want to explore. And honestly, instantly having a skyline that just varies the different heights of the buildings, even if it's just a block or two, like that right there, that building is probably 1, maybe 2 blocks, 3 blocks lower than that guy, and it just looks interesting. You're, again, creating those cool curves and interest points and everything like that to force the player, or make the player who might be exploring it, whether it's you, your friends, or whoever it might be, makes them want to move around, which instantly makes your build feel a lot cooler than it was beforehand. The last point I'd like to make in today's video is that builds that you make, you shouldn't be aiming to see them only from a specific tree about 50 or so blocks away from the build. You should make a build in Minecraft that's, let's not kill ourselves jumping off here. For some reason, I decided to take my armor off. You should not build something in Minecraft that is only meant to be viewed from far away. If you build something that's meant to be viewed while you're walking through it, you're exploring it, there's cool things to look at up close, it'll also look really cool from far away. So if you kind of take that into mind while you're building something, build it for while you're walking, from the player scaled, so you can walk around and see all these really cool, gorgeous things. Just be amazed by the grandeur of whatever it is that you're working on that makes you want to walk through the build. Simple things like that, or I guess that one's not very simple, but working on things like that makes you want to move around the build and keep further exploring it on the inside. That's really going to be something that's going to sell the build and make it just like 10 times better than it otherwise could be. That's going to do it for all of the tips in today's video, folks. I know typically people like to see a full, complete tutorial on how to build something. Building a city inside of Minecraft is not something that you can simply do a tutorial for. There's not one right way to do this thing. So in today's video, I was hoping to just share a few tips of my own that I've been using for a very, very long time when thinking about this project that might be able to help you all out there as well with your own city build projects, whatever you might be working on, or all of those things right there. So I hope you all did enjoy this one. Please be sure to hit that like button down below if you did. As a quick summary before we get out of here, make sure that you're not using exact straight lines for your roadways. Add a lot of variety into the roads, whether it's the detail you're using for it. A simple thing that I've learned recently that I like to do is adding in some of the roadways, like this one right here, where just randomly is broken up and we have stone brick and smooth stone in here. Just like maybe they came through and patched the road, and then the rest of this with the cobblestone is what it was previously. So just doing a few things like that can help out a lot of it. Experiment with density. Have some areas that are more dense than others that are much more open and just kind of very wide and might have a bunch of people moving around in them, all that type of stuff. Make it very much scaled around the Minecraft player. Use your roadways as a way of shaping your buildings, and make the build being something that you can view or that you want to view while walking around it, not out in the ocean, something way off over. And that way is the only place your build looks cool from. But anyways, everybody, thank you so very much for watching today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe if you are brand new and this video is helpful for y'all. And I will catch you on the flip side.